She didn't see it coming. One moment the forest was empty, silent except for the heavy fall of snow, and the next she was running for her life. Boots sank into the ice-crusted earth, sending shards of frost flying. Her lungs burned, each breath sharp and jagged, like the wind itself was cutting through her chest. Behind her, the snapping of branches, too deliberate to be random, told her she wasn't alone. Wolves. She didn't know how many, but their presence pressed against her skin, hot and cold at once, filling her with a terror that was both instinctual and personal. Her heart hammered. Don't shift. Don't give in. Not yet. The silver light beneath her skin flared in warning, a pulse she could almost taste, hot like molten metal. It begged her to let go, to become more than human, but she clenched her teeth, forcing it down, letting it tease without consuming her. She had no choice. Not now. Survival demanded restraint, and the wolf inside her, restless and impatient, growled in protest. Snow and mud clung to her legs, freezing her muscles, weighing her down. Branches whipped across her face, tearing at her hair, slicing tiny lines of blood across her skin. She stumbled, catching herself on a jagged tree root, and the cold seared through her. Every step felt like running through fire and ice at once. She was terrified, yes, but there was exhilaration too. The primal thrill of being hunted, of feeling herself on the knife's edge of power she barely controlled. The wolves' howls cut through the storm, echoing against the snow-laden trunks. Their voices weren't just predators. They were mirrors reflecting her fear, her determination, her strength. And the forest itself seemed to pulse with menace. Shadows twisted between the trees, black shapes that moved with deliberate patience. Something or someone watched her. She could feel eyes burning through the darkness, calculating, patient. She forced herself forward, chest heaving, muscles screaming, boots slipping on frozen moss. Keep moving. Don't stop. Not until... Her words died in a choke of wind. A flash of silver light danced along her arms as the wolf inside stirred, reminding her that every heartbeat carried danger and potential. Every breath, a spark waiting to ignite. A low growl rolled through the underbrush, closer now, almost too close. She risked a glance, and there they were. 4 wolves, maybe 5, moving in perfect coordination, their eyes locked on her, gleaming like polished obsidian. Teeth bared, hackles raised, yet there was intelligence there. They weren't mindless predators. They knew her. They knew fear. They knew the pulse of the untamed power she tried to hide. She ducked behind a fallen log, her hands trembling as she pressed against the rough bark. Rain and snow mixed in icy sheets, plastering her hair to her face. She shivered, not entirely from cold. Memories came unbidden, childhood whispers, the pack that had spat her out, calling her cursed, telling her she was too dangerous, too different. And now, every lesson, every scar, every word of rejection seemed to converge in this single moment of pure, unrelenting terror. The silver under her skin flared again, a soft, pulsing glow, and she could feel the wolf struggling beneath, urging her to embrace it, to turn the fear into a weapon. But she forced herself to breathe, to stay human, to keep running. She had to. Survival wasn't about power yet. It was about control, cunning, instinct sharpened by terror. Branches cracked behind her. A shadow shifted at the edge of her vision. Not the wolves, something else. Eyes glimmered in the dark, watching, waiting, judging. And for the first time she felt it. She was not alone in more ways than one. Someone, or something, was tracking her, moving with a purpose that mirrored her own desperate flight. Her boots slipped on ice, sending a spray of snow flying, and she tumbled into a hollowed-out cave, cradling herself against the stone. Her teeth chattered violently, muscles shaking, but she could still feel the pulse beneath her skin. Silver sparks drifted faintly across the cave floor, a reminder of the power she held, a warning that it would not remain contained forever. The howls of the wolves echoed closer. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, a drumbeat of fear and exhilaration intertwined. She pressed her hands against the cold stone, gripping with white-knuckled intensity. Every nerve was alight. Every instinct screamed at her to run again, to fight, to survive. And in the distance she felt it, an unnatural patience, a lurking presence, observing, calculating. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "I can't stop. I won't stop. Not now. Not ever." It was a vow, a prayer, and a challenge all at once. She didn't know if she would live through the night, didn't know if the wolves would let her, didn't know if the power inside would obey. But she would run. She would fight. She would survive. And somewhere in the storm, in the glint of silver sparks trailing behind her flight, eyes followed. Patient. Waiting. The hunt was far from over. The forest seemed to shiver around her. Snow whispered against bare branches, rain-slicked leaves glistened like broken glass, and every step she took felt impossibly loud, as though the world itself was alert to her presence. She had stumbled into a narrow path between two jagged cliffs, heart hammering, lungs raw, every nerve screaming that this was not just another trap. He was not alone anymore. And then she hit him. Literally. Her shoulder slammed into solid muscle and she went down hard, sliding across frozen earth. Pain radiated through her arm, sharp and biting, but the shock of the impact froze her more than the cold ever could. She pressed herself back against the figure she had collided with, struggling to regain balance, and for a heartbeat the world stopped. He was massive, towering over her, yet every inch of him exuded a predatory grace. Muscles rippled beneath damp, dark clothing. His hair clung in strands to a stern, angular face, and those eyes, oh those eyes, glowed faintly in the dim light like amber molten with fire and depth. He didn't move to attack. Instead he studied her, and in that instant she felt stripped bare. "You?" His voice was low, rough, carrying weight and recognition. "You're here." He didn't ask who she was. He didn't question why. There was familiarity, a dangerous kind of certainty in his tone, as if he had known her long before the night had brought her to this storm-battered forest. Her chest heaved. Words stuck in her throat. I'm not." Her voice cracked, swallowed by the wind. "I know your name." His lips curved faintly, not a smile, not yet, but the suggestion of something softer hidden beneath layers of steel and warning. "I've been watching you. For years." Her mind spun. Watching her? Why? She had survived packs that spat her out, humans that feared her, storms that nearly killed her. And now him. She didn't know whether to be furious, terrified, or inexplicably relieved. Perhaps all three at once. He stepped closer and the space around him seemed to contract. Even the wind, whipping snow and sleet into her hair, softened near him. His presence radiated power, not the chaotic flare of her own untamed silver, but a steady, overwhelming force that made her pulse jump, made the hair on her arms rise. Threat and protection, danger and shelter, fused into a single impossible aura. "Why are you here?" she asked, testing him. Her voice had grown steadier, braver, though her body trembled. She didn't trust him. And yet, she couldn't turn away. "Not fully." "To see if you'd survive," he replied almost casually, though the tension coiled around his words like a snake ready to strike. "To see if the wolf inside you could stay quiet when it wanted to roar." The air between them thrummed, alive with unspoken warnings. Magic whispered in the space around her, subtle sparks dancing along her skin as her silver pulse flickered involuntarily. He noticed, of course. His gaze sharpened, as if reading not just her form, but her essence, her potential, her danger. "You marked." The words fell from him, deliberate and heavy, and she felt the weight of them like chains. Her pulse spiked. "Blood like yours doesn't go unnoticed." Powerful. Dangerous. She recoiled, though not entirely in fear. Anger flared. "And you're the danger now?" she shot back, chest heaving, silver glinting faintly beneath her skin. "Because I can assure you, I've survived worse than your kind." He didn't flinch, didn't draw back. Instead he stepped closer, reducing the space to mere inches. And then he smiled, just a shadow of one, as if he'd expected her defiance. "I'm not here to fight," he said softly, almost impossibly gentle. "I'm here to watch you, to test you, and perhaps to guide you." Guidance. The word made her stomach twist. Who was he to guide her? Who dared enter her storm of chaos, her life of constant flight, and assume he could help? And yet, beneath the caution, beneath the instinctual tension, her body, her wolf, leaned toward him. Not trust. Not yet. But awareness. Recognition. Branches snapped in the distance. The wolves, alert, circling, aware. And she realized that even with him here, she was not safe. Her pulse quickened. Instinct warred with reason. The wolf inside her twitched, impatient. Let it loose. Become the predator. Tear him, no. Not him. She swallowed hard and stumbled back, forcing space. "I don't need a savior," she said, voice trembling but defiant. I manage." "You do." His tone softened for a breath, almost indulgent. Then sharper, commanding again. "But sometimes survival isn't enough. You need control. And you need me." Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to choose that for me." He inclined his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement, but his hand reached toward her without warning. "No. Not forceful." He pressed it to her shoulder where she had scraped herself on the frozen ground. His fingers brushed the tender skin and a shiver raced down her spine. Not cold, not pain, but something unfamiliar, something dangerous. Her eyes widened. Silver light pulsed faintly beneath her skin, reacting to his presence as though the wolf inside had recognized him too. And then their heartbeats synced. Not magically, not consciously, but in that terrifying, intimate moment she felt it. A rhythm shared. A bond unspoken, unacknowledged, but real. She wanted to pull away, to resist, to regain control of herself. And yet she couldn't. The pull was too strong. Her wolf howled inside, questioning, urging, thrilling at the proximity of a force it had never encountered before. "You're not supposed to belong here," he murmured almost to himself. But she heard, and something in the phrasing, the voice, the tone, it made her tremble. Not fearfully, not entirely, but with a profound awareness that she had been found in a world where she had always been hunted. "Then why are you here?" she whispered, barely audible, shivering from more than cold. He didn't answer immediately. He studied her, his eyes holding her still, holding her accountable, holding her in the storm's chaos. And she understood deep in her bones that he was struggling too. The pull between them, dangerous, illicit, uncontainable, was tangible. Both feared it, both resisted it, both knew it could not be ignored. Finally, he knelt slightly, tending the cut on her arm more deliberately this time. His fingers brushed again, lingering, and she felt herself crack in ways she hadn't expected. Not weakness, but recognition. Connection. Something tethered them in a storm of chaos and wolves and fear and silver light. She wasn't meant to belong to him, the world seemed to whisper, yet the bond feels alive. And in that frozen forest, under the heavy, drumming storm, with eyes that watched and wolves that stalked, she realized. She had just collided with destiny itself. The forest grew quiet after the storm, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The wind had slowed, snow still drifting in fine threads through the branches, catching the faint silver glow beneath her skin. She crouched behind a fallen tree, arms wrapped around herself, shivering, not from the cold, not entirely. Her mind replayed fragments of a life that had never truly been hers. She remembered the fire. The way it had ripped through her home through the night, consuming warmth and safety alike. She had been 7. Her mother had carried her outside, eyes wide, lips pressed into a determined line. But then everything had gone wrong. Flames had swallowed the path, the village had turned against them, and her mother had vanished. No footprints, no trace. Just the echo of her screams and the smell of smoke that lingered forever. Pack elders whispered her name after that night. Dangerous. Cursed. The girl who carried a spark of something old, something feared. And in those whispers, in those pointed glances, she had learned her first lesson. Fear breeds isolation. Even among those who should have protected her, she had been alone. Her power had awakened too early. She had shifted in moments of anger and despair, silver fur flashing beneath her skin, eyes glowing unnaturally in the dark. Others had recoiled. Parents, siblings, friends, they had pulled away, murmuring prayers, muttering warnings. She remembered the nights curled under a cold tree, snow pressing against her back, wolves howling far away in the distance. Sometimes she had wished she could run into their arms, could trust their instinctive loyalty. But she had been too human, too flawed, too volatile, too dangerous. And yet, in the storm of memory, there was one constant, the wolf inside her. The whispering, insistent voice that thrummed at the edge of her consciousness, always ready to surface when danger was near, when fear struck her, when rage took hold. Don't let go. Control it. Control yourself. But control had always been fleeting. Her breathing hitched as she remembered the first time she had almost lost herself entirely. She had been 10, trapped in a burning building, smoke thick in her lungs. Fear had clawed at her chest and instinct had taken over. Her body had surged, silver light flaring across her skin, her claws extending, her senses tearing through the night. She had escaped, yes, but at a cost. A neighbor had been injured. A family's trust shattered. And the whispers had grown louder. Dangerous, cursed, unfit. Now, crouched in the shadows, she could feel that same familiar tension. The wolf stirred, eager, restless, whispering warnings that she tried desperately to ignore. It wants to break free. It wants to act. It wants to survive. But if it emerges now, she swallowed hard. I can't. Not yet. And then he appeared. Not in the flash of confrontation, but lingering just beyond the tree-line, silent, observing. The Alpha King. His presence had been a force in the storm, undeniable, commanding, impossible to ignore. And now, watching her from the shadows, he seemed to sense the battle inside her as clearly as she felt it. His amber eyes studied her, narrowing slightly, not judging, not yet, but assessing, calculating. And she realized that for the first time in years, someone truly saw her. Not the cursed girl, not the dangerous wolf, not the fragile human trembling beneath layers of fear. Her. Entire. And that terrified her more than any predator in the forest ever could. The silver light beneath her skin pulsed faster. Her wolf whimpered softly, restless and impatient. Trust him. Oh, don't shift. Not now. The argument waged silently inside her, each heartbeat a drum of conflict. She wanted to flee, to disappear into the stormed woods, to erase herself from the world. But something else, something deeper, older, undeniable, rooted her in place. She had been running for so long, not just through forests, not just from wolves, packs or enemies, but from herself. Her power. Her rage. Her grief. Her loneliness. She had buried the truth, silenced the wolf, masked the fear. But it had always been there, thrumming beneath her skin like a live wire, always ready to ignite. And he could feel it. Of that she was certain. You've been hiding, he said softly, voice carrying across the distance like smoke curling through the trees. No judgment, just fact. Observation. Awareness. The wolf inside her stilled momentarily, alert but listening. I manage, she said, voice trembling. I always have. Manage. His gaze softened fractionally, though it remained sharp, precise, like a blade in amber light. Survive, yes. Thrive? Not yet. Not while you deny what you are. Her throat tightened. How dare he? How dare anyone speak as though they could see her truth, her shame, her fractured soul? She pressed her palms into the dirt, silver light pulsing faintly across her veins, betraying the fear and anger she tried to hide. I don't need you, she spat. And yet, when her eyes met his, when she saw the depth of recognition in his face, she faltered. Not fear. Not desire. Something heavier, something impossible to name, stirred. A tether forming, fragile and dangerous. He took a step closer, and the forest seemed to bend with his presence. Her pulse surged, every nerve hummed. Her wolf whined softly, instinctively sensing the danger, and the opportunity. Trust. Danger. Desire. Danger. Trust. The rhythm repeated, chaotic, insistent, undeniable. I see you, he said finally. Not just the girl. Not just the wolf. All of you. And I will not let you destroy yourself before the world recognizes what you truly are. Recognition. Acceptance. The words struck her in ways she had not anticipated. Her lungs tightened. Her throat burned. Her wolf stirred, its warning now tangled with exhilaration. She wanted to pull back, to deny, to run, but the truth was settling like snow over her heart. She had never been seen like this. Not really. And yet, trust terrified her more than any predator ever had. Because trust meant vulnerability. Trust meant risk. Trust meant allowing someone to touch the part of her that had always been untouchable. Her fingers curled around the edge of a mossy rock, knuckles whitening. Silver light pulsed stronger, responding to the swirl of fear, longing, and something else. Something she refused to name. She forced herself to breathe, slow and steady, grounding herself in the moment. The wolf whined, restless. It wants to leap. It wants to fight. But it waits for you. The Alpha King did not move closer, not yet. He simply waited. Patient, unwavering, like the forest itself had lent him his presence. And in that waiting, in that stillness, She felt the weight of every choice she had ever made pressing against her. Every moment of exile, every rejection, every night alone. Every time she had buried herself beneath layers of fear. It all culminated here in the cold hush of the snow-laden forest. In the silver glow that pulsed beneath her skin. In the amber eyes watching her, patient, knowing, impossible. And she realized for the first time in her fragmented life that she had to decide. Continue running, alone and fearful, or begin to embrace what she was, what she had always been, and the dangerous, exhilarating bond forming with the alpha standing mere feet away. Her heart ached with the weight of her past, her wolf growled in warning, and her silver light flared faintly, a pulse of defiance against the storm still raging inside and out. She understood suddenly the truth that had eluded her all these years. Running had kept her alive, but nothing, not the wolves, not the storms, not her fear, would ever let her truly live unless she faced the darkness inside herself. And the Alpha King, the impossible, infuriating, consuming presence at the edge of her world, he was both the mirror and the key. She swallowed hard, feeling the silver pulse beneath her skin resonate with her heartbeat, synchronized, tentative, electric, undeniable. And for the first time in forever she allowed herself to consider the possibility that she was not alone. The trees parted as if by command, revealing a grove that seemed untouched by time. Moss-covered stones rose like silent sentinels, etched with glowing runes that shimmered faintly in response to her presence. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something older, something ancient, something almost sacred. She paused, boots sinking slightly into soft soil, heart hammering, not from fear of the forest, but from the palpable pulse that thrummed beneath her skin. Silver light flickered faintly along her veins, a heartbeat echoing that of the land itself. Elders emerged from the shadows, cloaked in threads that seemed woven from twilight and mist. Their faces were lined with age and their eyes glimmered like molten amber. They spoke in whispers, voices low, reverent, carrying a weight she could feel pressing into her chest. "The one with the mark," they murmured, the words curling in the air like smoke. She froze, a cold shock running down her spine. The words resonated inside her, vibrating through her bones. The one with the mark. She had always felt marked but never understood the significance, not truly. The Alpha King's presence behind her was a silent anchor. He did not speak, but she felt his gaze, steady and unwavering, a tether holding her from plunging into the whirlpool of her own fear. His hand hovered near hers, not touching, not yet, but close enough to make the skin along her forearm prickle with awareness. "He knows," her wolf whispered. "He senses it all." She stepped forward tentatively, eyes scanning the grove. The runes pulsed in sync with her heartbeat, as if acknowledging her as something both feared and revered. She could hear whispers in the wind, faint voices speaking in a language she did not know but understood instinctively. The air hummed thick with power and destiny. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached toward one of the ancient stones. The moment her fingers brushed the carved surface, silver sparks flared, arcing across the runes. "Do you feel it?" The Alpha King's voice was quiet, low, but it carried across the grove. He stepped closer, the shadow of his form blending with the twilight. "This place, it recognizes you. Not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as inevitable." She shivered, pulling back slightly. "I don't understand. Why me? Why now?" Her voice cracked, betraying both fear and awe. "Because you are part of something far larger than yourself," he said, eyes never leaving hers. "Something old, something dangerous and beautiful." A sudden pulse of light ran through the grove, brighter this time, igniting the symbols etched into stone. Her silver veins flared in response, a storm of raw energy coiling beneath her skin. She felt the pull of destiny not as a promise but as a demand. She wanted to run, to flee the weight of expectation, the echo of prophecy, but her legs felt rooted and her heart, her wolf, told her to stay. The elders circled slowly, hands raised in silent invocation, their whispers growing louder, though still melodic and soft. One of them, a tall figure with hair like spun silver, stepped forward. "Child of the flame, twin-bound. Hear this. Your blood is both salvation and ruin. One sibling will rise with you to heal this fractured world. One will rise to shatter it." Her stomach knotted. Twin-bound? Her mind spun, struggling to reconcile the knowledge with the life she had been living. Alone, hunted, feared. A twin, she whispered, voice barely audible. Her wolf twitched beneath her skin, senses straining. One to save, one to destroy. And which am I meant to follow? Which will I become? The Alpha King's amber gaze softened, but there was tension there too. A war within him she could sense, a struggle between duty and something deeper. Your twin, they are close, he said, voice tight. I can feel them. And their power, it stirs around you. It's dangerous. Dangerous. The word set her pulse racing, and a flicker of fear mingled with anticipation. She had spent her life fleeing threats she could see, tangible, mortal. Now the threat was unseen, woven into bloodlines, into fate itself. The wolf inside her whimpered, aware of the danger, aware of the pull. One wrong step, one flicker of weakness. Her hands clenched at her sides. How do I know which path to take? She demanded, voice stronger now, tinged with defiance. How do I choose? You don't, one elder said softly, stepping closer. The path chooses you. Your choices will reveal your destiny, but the world will judge the outcome. One brother, one sister, one bond. The scales of fate are delicate, and even the slightest tremor can tip them. The grove seemed to respond to the words, wind rustling through branches, the glowing runes pulsing with sudden intensity. Silver light flared beneath her skin, wrapping her in warmth and light that felt like both armor and prison. She staggered slightly, her wolf growling softly, warning her. It's too much. It's always too much. The Alpha King reached out, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. The contact was grounding yet electrifying. She wanted to recoil, to push away, but her wolf stiffened, body responding to his presence in ways she had never allowed. Danger, trust, danger, desire. The instincts warred violently. A sudden vision flickered in her mind. A dark silhouette, male, familiar yet terrifying, standing in shadows as fire consumed everything around him. And then a second figure, a boy twin holding out a hand, beckoning her toward light. Conflicting impulses, heart-racing decisions, choices not yet hers to make. Her wolf growled low, a warning and a plea. Balance, you must balance. The Alpha King's voice cut through the whirl of sensation. You are not alone in this. Not while I stand here. Not while I breathe. The words were steady, commanding, yet something beneath them vibrated with restraint, fear, and desire. She realized suddenly that he, too, understood the stakes, not just for her but for the world, for the prophecy, for the delicate thread connecting the twins. The elders' whispers rose, chanting now, melodic and haunting. Child of the flame, twin-bound, power born of fire and blood. Their voices wrapped around her, resonating with every beat of her heart. The wolf within twisted and lunged against the bindings of her control, silver light bursting brighter. A raw, ancient energy surged through her limbs, connecting her to the grove, to the land, to the destiny that had been waiting for her since before she had even been born. And in that surge she glimpsed something terrifyingly beautiful. The path she was meant to walk, winding, dangerous, and lit by both fire and shadow. The twin, either salvation or ruin, was out there waiting. The world teetered on the edge of a knife, and the slightest misstep could spell catastrophe. Her heart pounded in sync with the glowing runes, her wolf snapping and whining with restless urgency, her power thrumming just beneath the surface. She looked up at the Alpha King, searching his face for guidance, for reassurance, for something human and tangible amid the mythic weight pressing down on her. His jaw was tight, eyes unreadable, but his presence offered a tether, a sliver of hope. Whatever happens, he said, voice low, reverent, we face it together. But be warned, the twins' shadow is long and their intent may not be kind. Her breath caught. The grove seemed to exhale, a wind sweeping through the leaves, tugging at her hair, at her cloak, at the edges of reality. She felt a tremor beneath her feet, subtle but insistent, as though the land itself was acknowledging her, and the storm of destiny that followed her everywhere. And in that moment she understood, nothing would ever be the same again. The prophecy had been whispered in shadows, carried in the blood of her ancestors, and now at last, it had reached her. He was twin-bound. One brother would heal, one would destroy. Her power, her fire, was capable of both creation and annihilation. And the Alpha King, he was the one constant in a world spiraling toward chaos. Her wolf growled low, body trembling with anticipation and dread. The world waits. The twin waits. The fire inside waits. And she had to choose. The grove, once hallowed and silent, erupted into chaos. The air shifted. The wind carried a sharper bite, carrying whispers not of prophecy but of accusation. Figures moved from the shadows. Rival alphas whose presence brought tension like lightning to dry tinder, and shadow beasts, sinewy and malevolent, eyes gleaming with hunger. They did not wait. They came for her, for him, for the delicate balance that had been so carefully preserved. She stumbled forward instinctively, boots slipping on damp moss, and felt the Alpha King's hand on her arm, steadying yet commanding. His eyes were fire and restraint, fierce yet calculating. He knew the consequences of failure, and yet he hesitated, not for lack of strength, but because the moment demanded a choice he had never been trained to make. His pack, loyal, watchful, bristling with suspicion, encircled them. Their leader's gaze flickered between her and their own instincts, torn between tradition and the inexplicable pull he felt toward her. Voices rose like crashing waves. She manipulates. She seduces. She is dangerous. One accused, sharp as a blade slicing the cold air. Another barked, "We cannot allow this power to disrupt the balance of our pack." Her heart hammered, matching the rhythm of her wolf's frantic growls, her body a coiled spring of fear, fury, and untapped strength. They do not understand. They never will. She stepped back, nearly tripping over exposed roots, and the silver light beneath her skin flared involuntarily, reacting to both fear and rage. Her wolf surged inside, claws scraping at the edges of control. "I am not your pawn. I am not your weapon. Come to me." The Alpha King's jaw tightened, a battle raging within him as visible as the tension radiating from the pack. His hand hovered near her, unspoken protection, unspoken restraint. His wolf growled in tandem with hers, senses intertwined, warning and pleading. "Do not let them break her. Do not let them break us." A shadow beast lunged from the periphery, teeth bared and claws ready. She barely sidestepped, boots skidding on wet moss, silver sparks trailing across the ground like stardust scattered in panic. Her hands tingled, fingers brushing the invisible threads of magic that connected her to the grove, to the prophecy, to the raw power she had feared yet longed to embrace. Her wolf whispered insistently, "Fight now. Fight or perish." Rival alphas surged forward, eyes blazing with challenge. One stepped into the light, eyes fixed on her with a mix of suspicion and veiled fear. "You belong to no one," he spat, "and yet you claim the allegiance of our alpha? You have no right." His words struck deeper than the icy wind slicing across her face. She swallowed hard, drawing in breath that burned her lungs, and a flicker of determination sparked in her chest. "If they doubt me, I will show them I am not weak. I am not prey." The Alpha King finally moved, stepping between her and the pack. His presence was like a living wall, unwavering, protective, yet unyielding. "Enough." His voice rolled like thunder across the grove. The trees shivered, the earth seemed to respond, but the dissenters did not relent. Some snarled, teeth flashing, others bared claws. "You will choose," they demanded. "Her or the pack." She felt the weight of the accusation, the impossible choice hanging over him like a blade. Her wolf thrashed inside her, urging independence, urging defiance. "Do not wait for permission. Do not beg for protection." Silver light surged, almost involuntarily, illuminating the grove with a spectral glow. Leaves quivered, runes pulsed, and the air vibrated with raw energy. Her voice cut through the tension, trembling but unbroken. "I will not hide. I will not kneel. I will not be your sacrifice or your shadow. I will stand on my own if I must." Her words ignited the air around her, sparks flickering off the stones like fireflies caught in a storm. She could see the Alpha King's jaw clench, hear the conflicted growl of his wolf, feel the synchronous pull between them, the silent acknowledgement of a bond neither could yet name, yet neither could ignore. A shadow beast lunged again, faster this time, teeth aimed at her shoulder. She pivoted instinctively, silver energy coiling around her like liquid flame, and the creature recoiled, singed by the touch of power she had barely dared to wield. Her heartbeat roared in her ears, adrenaline flooding her system, fear sharpening her senses, anger fueling her movements. "I'm not afraid. I will not fall." The Alpha King moved again, precision and power combined, striking a shadow beast with a strength that left the ground trembling. He glanced at her, eyes fierce, yet his restraint faltered slightly as he assessed her silver glow. He understood instinctively, this was not just raw power, this was legacy, blood, prophecy manifesting in real time. And he, for all his strength and command, could not dictate how it would unfold. Accusations from the pack rose like jagged peaks in the storm of the grove. "She is too dangerous," one cried. "She is not loyal," another shouted. And through it all her resolve hardened. "Loyal? To them? No. Loyal to myself. Yes." She surged forward, silver light arcing off her skin, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Shadow beasts backed away, sensing the awakening power, the almost untamed energy. Rival alphas faltered, suddenly aware that she was no longer a passive participant in their scrutiny. She was a force unto herself, independent, untethered, alive. The Alpha King hesitated for a fraction of a heartbeat, a decision suspended between pack loyalty and bond to her. She sensed the inner battle, the unspoken conflict, and a strange, sharp pride coiled in her chest. He hesitates. He sees me, not just my danger but my strength. She exhaled slowly, a release of tension, a small declaration of autonomy. "If you cannot trust me, I will make you," she whispered, voice low, steel laced with fire. The grove seemed to echo the words, leaves rustling as if in approval. Silver light flared along her arms, illuminating the fear, awe, and begrudging respect flickering across the Alpha King's face. A pack member lunged suddenly, claws aimed at her side, but the Alpha King's presence intervened, blocking, striking, creating a momentary shield. She felt his energy brush against hers, a pulse of power and recognition, almost intimate, almost dangerous. The near contact sparked her wolf's frenzy, wanting, needing, responding. He pressed forward, unafraid, determined, untamed. The confrontation reached its apex. Shadow beasts circling, rival alphas glaring, the Alpha King's hesitation palpable. She for the first time felt the thrill of independence surge. Her silver fire responding, coiling, wrapping around her, a living, breathing extension of her will. She was no longer hunted, no longer passive. She was an entity of her own making, a force of prophecy in motion. Her final words, carrying both warning and promise, echoed through the grove. "I will not be your victim. I will not be your pawn. I will fight, not for you, not for them, but for me." Silver sparks danced along her skin, illuminating the grove like stars scattered across the earth, and the Alpha King's jaw clenched, respect and uncertainty warring in his gaze. And in that breathless, charged moment, the first sparks of independent power ignited, raw and uncontrolled, yet beautiful, alive, and utterly unstoppable. The grove itself seemed to lean in, watching, waiting as destiny stirred once more, and the world around them began to tremble with the first hint of reckoning. The storm had passed, leaving the forest draped in a damp, silver quiet. Rainwater dripped from twisted branches, forming tiny rivers along the mossy ground. She stumbled, exhausted, yet driven by adrenaline still coursing in her veins. He guided her through the haze, careful, deliberate, yet something in the way he moved, alert, protective, made her pulse quicken. Every step through the dimly lit forest was a silent promise. "I will not let you fall." They reached the cave as the last of the sun's light dipped below the horizon. Shadows pooled in the jagged crevices, and the air smelled of wet stone and earth. He knelt, gently urging her to sit, and she obeyed, limbs trembling, chest heaving. His fingers hovered near her arm, hesitating, not wanting to overstep, yet needing to bridge the gap between them. Every brush of his hand was electricity, soft, deliberate, dangerous. "I need to see the wounds," he murmured, voice low, almost uncertain. She flinched instinctively, the memory of betrayal and pain tugging at her skin. She nodded, letting him lean closer. His touch was firm, purposeful, and yet careful. The air between them seemed to thrum with tension, the kind of tension that could ignite with a word, a look, a breath. He tended to her injuries, the sting of rainwater mixing with the ache of cuts, and she felt warmth from him seep into her bones. "I've done things," he began, voice rough, eyes cast downward. "To claim the crown, to become Alpha. I've killed. Friends, rivals. Those I swore I'd protect." He swallowed, the weight of confession tangible, almost suffocating. "Every life taken, every choice, it haunts me." Her own scars itched under the firelight, a silent reminder of a life carved from rejection and fear. "I know pain," she whispered almost to herself. "I've lived with it every day, being hunted, being cursed, being told I'm too dangerous to love, too dangerous to belong." Her eyes flicked to him, seeing the raw truth of his soul reflected in the amber glow of the fire. He met her gaze then, and for the first time the world outside the cave, the storm, the forest, the threat, dissolved. All that existed was her and him, bound by understanding, by shared torment, by unspoken desire. The air thickened, charged with anticipation, the brush of his hand lingering on her arm, fingers tracing the line of a wound as if memorizing it. Her wolf stirred, whispers rising in warning and curiosity, sensing his energy mingling with hers, pushing boundaries she had long guarded. Trust, or flee, danger is near. Yet he is not the enemy. The conflict within her heart mirrored the storm she had escaped, chaotic, unrelenting, and alive. The Alpha King's own restraint faltered. He leaned closer, breath brushing her cheek. She felt the heat of him, the danger, the intensity, the desire that ran parallel to his protective instincts. "I see you," he murmured, voice low, almost intimate. "All of you. Not the mask. Not the lies. I see what they fear and what they should fear." His words pressed against her chest, stirring the dormant courage she had barely acknowledged. Her heart lurched. To trust him is to risk everything. Yet the pull between them was undeniable, like gravity, like inevitability. She leaned in slightly, drawn to the warmth, to the possibility of connection she had always feared. The firelight danced in his eyes, revealing flickers of vulnerability beneath the armor of command. "He is human. He is flawed. And he sees me, really sees me." Their faces drew closer. The almost kiss hung in the air, a fragile bridge between desire and restraint. She could feel his heartbeat syncing with hers, rapid, palpable, each thrum a declaration that transcended words. Every nerve in her body screamed with tension, a silent acknowledgement that once crossed there would be no turning back. And then, a distant sound shattered the moment. A low growl rolled from the shadows outside the cave, deep and resonant, reverberating against stone. Something was coming. Something wrong. Their attention snapped outward, adrenaline and fear surging. The tension between them didn't vanish. It shifted, twisting into shared urgency, a bond forged in the crucible of threat. He pulled back slightly, eyes locking with hers. "Not yet," he said, voice a blend of command and plea. "We survive first. Then we see if this bond is strong enough to endure everything else." His hand lingered near hers, not touching yet tethered, as if the distance itself was sacred. She nodded, understanding the unspoken agreement. Trust would have to wait, desire would have to be restrained, yet the bond had been forged irreversibly in the quiet between storms, in the firelit shadows, in the shared confessions of pain and power. The wolf inside her whispered in approval, soft but urgent. "This connection, it is not weakness. It is strength. It is necessary." And she felt it, an intertwining of power and vulnerability, of fear and courage, of two hearts learning to beat as one amidst chaos. The fire flickered, shadows dancing across their faces, and she knew that this night, this cave, this fragile intimacy would remain etched in her memory long after the forest had healed, long after the storm had passed, long after the world tried to tear them apart. But for now, survival was immediate, urgent. And desire, raw, dangerous, undeniable, waited, suspended, coiled tightly like a spring ready to unleash at the next heartbeat, the next breath, the next touch that would dare cross the line they had both been too cautious to explore. And even as the distant threat crept closer, every instinct told her one truth. She could not deny this bond, not now, not ever. And the Alpha King, for all his power, for all his command, could not turn away either, because something deeper, ancient, and utterly unbreakable had sparked between them. The cave hummed with quiet intensity, the storm outside momentarily forgotten, replaced by the steady rhythm of two hearts tethered by fire, by fear, by desire, and the knowledge that the world beyond would never allow them to forget it. The forest had grown unnaturally silent, the kind of silence that presses against the skin and fills the chest with dread. Even the wind seemed to hesitate, uncertain whether to move or hold its breath. She stumbled into the clearing, chained and exposed, her silver-glowing veins pulsating beneath pale, bruised skin. The elder's whispers cut through the stillness, sharp, venomous, a chorus of condemnation. The harbinger, the apocalypse, she cannot live among us, one hissed. Every eye in the council stared at her, and for the first time she felt the raw, naked weight of fear mirrored in their gazes. Her bloodline, once whispered about in tales meant to scare children, now stood accused of bringing ruin. She had been hunted before, judged, feared, but never like this. Not in front of so many, not in a place meant to protect her. Chains clinked around her wrists, heavy, cold, biting into tender flesh. And yet, despite the cold iron, something in her stirred. A pulse of defiance that would not be shackled. He, the Alpha King, stood on the edge of the clearing, eyes locked on hers. Conflicted. Torn. A silent argument raged behind his gaze. A war between duty and desire, between pack loyalty and the bond that had begun to bloom between them. He saw it and it stung. For all his power, for all his authority, he hesitated. And hesitation was a luxury she could not afford. The pack murmured accusations, voices sharp, jagged. She seduced him, one snarled. She bends all with her cursed power, another spat. The words rolled over her like stones, each one leaving a mark deeper than any wound inflicted by claws or teeth. And yet, even as the fury and fear of the council threatened to crush her, her wolf stirred beneath the surface, growling in restrained warning, in recognition of the danger, and in anticipation of the power that waited to be unleashed. A spark of silver light flickered across her skin, pulsing in response to her rising anger, her terror, her refusal to yield. It was dangerous, unstable, a promise of devastation should she lose control. Chains rattled again, heavy against stone and bone, and her hands clenched, nails digging into palms already raw from previous struggles. The council took a step back, sensing the tension, but too late. The power had begun to rise. She spoke, voice trembling yet carrying through the silence like a whip. I am not what you fear. I am not what you want me to be. I am more. Her words ignited something in the air, subtle sparks of magic that twisted around the clearing, wrapping like silver smoke around their legs. The elders recoiled instinctively, eyes wide, whispers frantic. And then the surge came. It was sudden, uncontrollable. A silver fire bursting from her veins, flaring along the surface of her skin, lighting the clearing in unearthly radiance. Chains bent against her strength, glowing with the reflected power, and she felt the wolf inside roar in triumph and terror, a sound that seemed to echo through time itself. He stepped forward, fingers outstretched, yet she froze him with a look, a warning forged from years of being underestimated. Do not. Not yet. This is mine to claim, mine to understand. The Alpha King hesitated, torn between stopping her and letting her embrace the force that was as much a part of her as her heartbeat. The air thickened with tension. It was no longer a simple confrontation but a reckoning, a testing ground for power, loyalty, and love entwined in impossible ways. The pack surged forward, a tide of fear and accusation, but her silver light danced around them, crackling like lightning over stone, searing, untouchable. One wolf yelped, recoiling as sparks brushed fur and skin. Another faltered, instinct screaming to retreat. In that moment she was no longer a girl caught in their judgment. She was a storm, a force that demanded recognition, a living prophecy come to life. Memories collided within her. The fire of childhood, the endless nights of exile, the whispering fear of the world. And now the culmination. A power she had been taught to fear, to hide, to restrain. And yet it was hers. Raw, untempered, and untethered by expectation. He watched, hands frozen mid-step, eyes wide, heart torn. He had known her bond, had felt her presence, had sensed the depth of her power, but nothing had prepared him for this full, unrestrained awakening. Every instinct screamed to intervene, to contain, to guide, but she was beyond containment. And yet, she was still her. Still the girl whose pulse had raced alongside his in a firelit cave. Still the girl whose trust had been fragile, delicate, and precious. Her voice rose again, steady despite the tremor in her hands. I will not be your sacrifice. I will not be your weapon. I will be me. The chains rattled once more and she wrenched free, silver light bursting outward, leaving streaks in the air like fire across the night sky. The elders shrieked, covering eyes, retreating, fear tangible in every shuddering breath. And then came the pause, the silence of awe, of terror, of recognition. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Trees bowed subtly to the energy radiating from her, leaves shimmering with reflected light. The very ground trembled, sensing the presence of a force older, more dangerous, and more beautiful than any had dared imagine. He finally moved, not to restrain but to stand beside her. Not to chain but to witness. Not to judge but to understand. And in that moment, amidst the chaos, he realized that his hesitation had been necessary, that the girl he had begun to trust, to admire, to desire, had to claim this moment entirely on her own. But the power surged further, a silver inferno reaching the edges of reason, and she nearly lost herself, wolf and woman intertwined, power unbound. The cliffhanger of survival hung heavy in the air. Would she maintain control, or would the prophecy devour her? Would the world survive the force she now wielded? Or would it tremble under the awakening of a power long feared and misunderstood? The forest glowed in the aftermath of her flare, silver light bouncing off stone and leaves, shadows stretching unnaturally. Her chest heaved, wolf growling softly beneath her skin, senses razor-sharp, adrenaline cutting through pain, fear, and triumph all at once. She was both prey and predator, danger and savior, hunted and untouchable, every identity converging in one overwhelming surge of existence. He reached for her again, slower this time, as if acknowledging that some battles could only be fought together, but some awakenings had to be endured alone. She met his gaze, fire in her eyes, silver radiance flickering across skin and hair. "I survive," she whispered, almost a vow, almost a challenge. And it rang clear, power, defiance, and identity fused into a single undeniable truth. Would she embrace the full extent of her power, or would it consume everything, everyone, including him? Would their bond hold when the world itself feared her existence? The answers lay just beyond the clearing, in shadows, in whispers, in the quiet storm of silver that was now unmistakably, irrevocably hers. The moment she broke free from chains in the clearing, something shifted, not just in her body, not just in the silver fire that danced across her veins, but in the very air surrounding the forest. Leaves quivered as if whispering her name. The wind bent, bowing to the presence of a force far older than the pack, older than the world itself. Her ancestors, long gone, spoke in voices that coursed through her mind. A chorus of guidance, warning, and pride. "Claim it. You are the blood of storms, the flame of moonlight. You are hers to wield and no one else's to dictate." Silver light surged, not uncontrolled this time, but deliberate, fluid, as if the energy had found its true vessel. Her limbs stretched with strength she had never known, her eyes shone with ancient wisdom, and her very aura radiated authority. The clearing became a cathedral, the trees arches, the sky a vaulted ceiling of twilight brilliance. Every shadow, every creature, every whisper of wind acknowledged her. The twin, her mirror, her counterpart in prophecy, stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief and terror. Where she had been tentative, unsure, hunted, she now stood absolute, unbreakable. The air hummed with power and destiny intertwined. He, the Alpha King, stood frozen, heart pounding, a storm of emotions crossing his face. Fear, reverence, desire, recognition. He had known her strength, had glimpsed it in fragments, but never fully. Never like this. Now the very world seemed to bend toward her will, and in that awe he realized the truth he could no longer deny. She was not a possession, not a prize, not a threat to be tamed. She was sovereign, and the crown of her own destiny rested only on her shoulders. Her voice rang, clear and commanding, cutting through the tension. "You don't get to choose me now." The words were both a decree and a release. The chains of expectation, of prophecy, of others' fear, fell away like dust in sunlight. Her power, her identity, her entire being had been claimed by no one but herself. Every heartbeat resonated with certainty, every breath a declaration of independence. The twin turned, fleeing into the shadows, a wisp of fear and failure against her radiant presence. She did not pursue, for her focus was no longer divided. She had survived betrayal, accusation, and the almost overwhelming surge of power, and now, in the aftermath, clarity settled in her bones. She was whole, indivisible, untouchable by those who had doubted her. He took a cautious step forward, every muscle taut, every instinct screaming to reach her, to pull her back into his protection. But she did not flinch at his approach, nor did she seek refuge. Instead, she tilted her chin, silver light casting subtle shadows across her face, and allowed him to witness, not her submission but her mastery. I am not your sacrifice. I am not your pawn. I am me. The Alpha King swallowed, the truth of her words striking deeper than any fang or claw could. The ground trembled slightly beneath them, subtle at first, then more pronounced as if the earth itself acknowledged her claim. Trees shimmered under the silver light of her power, leaves quivering in silent applause, branches stretching toward her as though in recognition. Wolves in the distance howled, a call of acknowledgement, respect and awe that echoed across the forest floor. She was no longer running. She was ascending. Every memory, the childhood flames, the whispers of exile, the early manifestation of her forbidden power, solidified into a crown of experience. They were no longer wounds but armor, no longer scars but marks of honor. And as she moved through the clearing, her steps deliberate, the air thickened with a tangible weight of destiny fulfilled. He reached out, fingertips brushing against hers, but she did not recoil. Instead, she acknowledged him not as master or mate but as witness. The tension between them remained, not broken but transformed into something richer. Recognition, respect, unspoken devotion forged in fire and fear alike. In that touch, the promise of connection shimmered, delicate yet undeniable, a tether not of control but of mutual understanding. Silver light pulsed with each heartbeat, flowing outward to meet the horizon, touching every living thing in the forest, every leaf, every stone, every creature that breathed the night air. Her presence was no longer hidden, no longer tentative. She had claimed power not for vengeance, not for survival but for self. And in doing so she had transformed the very meaning of fear and hope. The clearing settled into a reverent silence. Even the wind whispered against the trees, tentative, cautious, and the stars seemed to glimmer brighter, as if witnessing the rise of a new force, a new authority. She exhaled, slow, steady, the weight of prophecy balanced on the edge of serenity. She was free, whole, and utterly alive. The Alpha King bowed his head slightly, not in submission but in acknowledgement. No words were needed. The clearing itself resonated with what had transpired. The twins' shadow disappeared completely, leaving only the echo of fear and what-ifs. The forest knew what she had become. She knew what she had always been capable of. Her voice softened, almost a whisper now, resonating not only in the clearing but in the hearts of all who might hear. I am not your sacrifice. I am my own. And in that whisper, there was the promise of new beginnings, of stories yet untold, of power understood and embraced. The final heartbeat of tension faded, replaced by an awe that was cinematic in scope. She turned, leaving the clearing behind, each step deliberate, each breath a rhythm of independence. The forest itself seemed to part for her, as if acknowledging the sovereignty she had claimed, the destiny she had fulfilled, and the fire that would never be dimmed. And the narrator's voice lingered in the mind of every listener, soft, haunting, intimate. Would you have chosen her, or feared her power too? If this story stirred something inside you, subscribe to Anne's Romance Collections, where love burns, fate bites, and destiny never asks permission. Because the true alpha has not risen yet. The screen of imagination faded, but the pulse of her awakening, of her power, of her indomitable spirit, lingered in the mind long after. The story was not over. The world had witnessed her rise. And the forest and the night, and the silver fire of her essence would not forget.